This poll blew my mind away completely. 91% of artists have interacted with less than one collector in the last month. In the next couple of minutes, this will change forever because we will be giving you a blue chip blueprint to find an unlimited amount of untapped art collectors without posting content online, without spending money on ads or any of the sneaky sales strategies out there. Now, before we give you the blue chip blueprint top level artist use, we first have to talk about which type of collectors exist, because the best way to find something is to know what you're searching for. And so what type of art collector profiles exist in the world? The first type of collector is the novice collector, the complete beginner who just is stepping his toes into the art market. And the thing is that they know less about art than you do. And they are searching for guidance, for information, for ways to figure out how the art world works. Generally speaking, these collectors are very approachable for beginners and emerging artists. And so how are you going to approach them? Well, in essence, you will want to provide content about the art market, about emerging artists, what to look for. Generally speaking, become a resource that they can use to upgrade their skill, to upgrade their understanding about art and the art market. The second type of collector is the philanthropist. Oftentimes these people want to go beyond just purchasing art. They want to provide support for artists in various ways, whether it's offering them housing, sponsorships, commissions, that type of stuff. For them, the art that they collect is partially a representation of the good that they bring into the world, because they believe that they are good human beings and they want to do good things. And so how are you going to position yourself to attract these types of buyers or find these types of buyers? Well, generally speaking, you want to participate in artist residencies and apply for grants, because those types of institutions are places that are very attractive for those types of collectors. The third type of collector is the emotional buyer. They buy artworks because it connects with them on a deep, foundational, emotional level. For those types of collectors, it's less about the quality behind the piece or the skill level or the potential increase in value, and it's more about that emotional connection that they have. And these types of collectors like to talk about their collection in an emotional manner. They will not talk about the value of the particular artworks, but they will talk about what it did for them when they saw it the first time, for example. And so generally speaking, you as an artist will want to make it as easy for them as possible to tell those types of stories. And so how are you going to do that? Well, you are going to do that by becoming good at storytelling and then telling stories about your work, telling stories about the inspiration behind that work. And so what does that mean? Well, it means that you will have to read storytelling books and then incorporate that into your messaging on social media everywhere you do it. Now, there are obviously more than 3 types of collectors out there. Going through all of them would make this video very boring, and so I'm not going to do that. But I have made a list with around 30 art collector profiles that you need to become aware of, because in the world of art, the rules are very simple. Whoever understands the art collectors best wins the game. And so this list will completely demystify everything there is to know about art collectors. I'll share it at the end of this video. But for now, I hope you understand that this idea that you can connect with any type of collector is completely BS. The only type of collector that you can connect with is a collector whose profile aligns with your artwork profile and your artist profile. Now, once you become aware of the different types of art collector profiles out there and how to approach them, you also have to become aware of some of the pitfalls and misconceptions that are out there, because if you approach them in the wrong way, you will burn that lead forever for the rest of your art career. And the art world is a very small place. The people you see on your way up are the same people you will see on your way down. And so it's very important to not burn those connections. So let's talk about that. The first myth is that artists are not business people and they should not be selling out. They should not be participating in any of these networking events. They should leave that to the galleries and the dealers, and they should only focus on making art, and anything that derives from that is devaluing the work. Now, this is complete nonsense, because if you look at the best artists from the past, take a look at, for example, Leonardo da Vinci, you will see that they were networking all of the time. Da Vinci would go to various art hubs, Florence, Milan, Rome, and then he would take his sketches, take his inventions with them on those travels, and then present them to patrons and important figures of that time. That is how he connected himself with the Duke of Milan. That is how he connected himself with the Medici family, one of the most powerful families of that time. And not only those traditional types of networking, but also collaborating with other thinkers, other artists. There's this one example. I had to search this up on Google. I don't know these things out of my head. But anyway, apparently he did the illustrations of a famous mathematician, Luca Pacioli's book or something. And so that is what we see. We see these top level artists collaborating with top level people of their time. And so what does this mean for artists? What does this mean for us? Well, if Leonardo da Vinci finds it worth his time to do some networking after juggling inventions and changing the world and making art and everything, then we should probably find some time to do the same thing as well. Now, the second myth is that in order to sell art, in order to find collectors, in order to attract collectors, you need to have an art style. You need to have something that is specifically unique to you. Now, this is absolutely not true. The whole art style thing in the art world is absolutely overrated and not in line with the success stories of artists from the past. If you look at, for example, Picasso, he had all sorts of things. He had the blue period, the pink period, then he had this cubist period. He was also making like children types of drawings, then realistic work, then different types of art materials that he was using, ceramics, drawing, painting, you name it. And he is obviously a famous artist. And so the art style thing is overrated. But more importantly, if you look at all the collector types that are out there, the list that I will be giving in a minute, then you'll see that only 2 types of art collectors are attracted to a specific type of art style. All the other ones, they don't care about that. The third myth is that once you find collectors that are completely in line with your work, that absolutely love your work, that somehow they will magically start buying your work. This is also simply not true, because how are you going to connect with those people? What are you going to say? If you say something like most artists, hey, I really like the posts on your Instagram page, please check out my artworks on my Instagram page. Or if you're opening a gallery, like, hey, I just opened a gallery in the neighborhood, please come by and stop over. Like, that's obviously not going to work. If you do that, then you can clearly see that it's all about you and your problems. And the problem with that is that people don't have time for you and your problems because they are busy spending all of their time on their own problems. And so what is going to happen if you say something in the lines of, hey, please check out my Instagram page? Nothing. They will simply not reply to that and they will not care about it. And if you do that too often, you're probably gonna burn down a lead for eternity. And we will talk about the right way to approach those collectors in a minute, but first let's go to the most important part of this video, how to find art collectors. Now, there are obviously a lot of ways to find art collectors. We will be talking about a hidden pathway on Instagram that you can execute on with as little as 10 followers. You don't have to post anything, any content or anything like that. Now, why Instagram, you may ask? Well, I see a lot of artists comparing themselves, and with a lot of artists I obviously mean I was doing that all of the time myself. And so what you see is a lot of artists comparing themselves with other artists on Instagram. Some 18-year-old that gets thousands of likes, and then they feel bad about themselves because they only get 20 likes or 30 likes or 15 likes. And the thing about this method is that it will show you how likes don't actually matter. You will immediately realize that you can sell way more, 10 times more with 10 likes than that 18-year-old with thousands of likes. And so what does that mean? It means that you will not feel bad about not having enough likes on Instagram anymore while finding art collectors and selling art. So let's go over the steps. Step 1, open the Instagram app and create a profile if you don't already have one. Step 2, post a couple of artworks to give a representation of what your art is all about. Likes don't matter, don't care about that. Step 3, this is where it becomes slightly more important. Create a qualified list of art galleries. The more qualified the list is, the less time you will waste on any of the upcoming steps that I will be explaining. And so what are qualified galleries? So let me quickly take the list so that I don't skip anything for you. Number 1. Galleries that represent artists that are making art that is similar to the art that you are making. This is probably the most important one. Number 2, galleries that have an Instagram profile and have been active for a particular amount of time. Number 3, preferably they have a decent amount of followers and good engagement on their posts, because engagement will show how involved their community is, including the collectors that are in that community. Number 4, you want to prioritize galleries in famous art hubs like London, Berlin, New York, Paris, cities like that. Number 5, only include galleries that are regularly doing exhibitions and participating in art fairs. Now in step 4, you want to take this list and arrange it from most important to least important. And in doing so, you want to prioritize galleries that are in close proximity to your studio, so that in some kind of future, when those potential collectors that you will find, which will be explained in a minute, that they might be able to come over to your studio and meet you in real life. Number 2, you want to select galleries that are representing artists not only in your style, but are representing artists within your price category. Let's say you are selling at 2-3k price points, and you don't want to have galleries that are selling at 100k price points, because those collectors are obviously not in line with your type of artist profile. Now in the 5th step and final step, you will use this list and then go to the Instagram profiles of those galleries, and then you want to click on their followers or the people that they are following themselves. In that list of people, you will find a lot of collectors. Why? Because galleries want to reciprocate to the people that they do business with. They also want to understand their customers more. Whoever understands the customer best wins the game. And so they will want to follow those collectors. They will also want to show some appreciation to those collectors. Let's say this collector, a particular potential collector, follows them. What are they going to do? Of course, they're going to follow back. And so in that list, you will find collectors. Then you go through that list and you click on profiles, and then you scan for which profiles are collector profiles. Once you find collector profiles, you interact with that profile. You read their comments. You actually consume the post. You actually consume the comments. And then once you consume it, you can like it, you can comment on it yourself, you can follow them, etc., etc. Now, in order to give you an example, let's just go through one of these things. Let's take the Gagosian gallery, for example. Now, this is obviously too big of a gallery. I wouldn't recommend that for artists like ourselves, but just to give you an example, this gallery obviously has way too many followers and way too many people, so this is not a good example. They're also way too big. Now, here's an interesting thing already. In this section, you can see followed by, and then in this black section, you see how many of the people that you follow are following this particular profile. And so if you have, let's say, a particular collector that you're not really certain of if it is a collector, and you are following a lot of collectors yourself, a lot of art insiders, and suddenly you stumble upon their profile and you see that a lot of the people that you are following are also following them in that black line, then it's clear they're very much connected within the art world, and it's a profile that you have to take into account. So let's click on their following, and then you can just go through the list and you randomly click on particular people, like here, Sophie Q. Okay, so this is a private. A lot of them will be private, but here again, you already see a couple of people are following this person, so like Nino Mir gallery, so that means that this is most likely going to be a collector. Let's click on another profile. So here we have 3 posts followed by some important institutions, and so this is probably a profile that is well connected with the art world, but not really that active, and so inactive account, yeah, okay, so that's not going to be valuable. Anyway, so you go through this list and you try to find collectors, try to find profiles that are collector profiles. And so you immediately stumble upon a particular problem. How can you recognize those collector profiles, especially if you don't follow a lot of those people yourself and you don't have that black line, or there's simply more ambiguity in the profile that you're seeing. And so how are you going to recognize if a particular profile is an artist profile? Well, the most obvious one is, of course, if they mention buying art, then it's obviously a collector. The second thing to look for is if they are visiting a lot of art events, openings, exhibitions, art fairs, but especially VIP type of events. In that case, they are at the very minimum an art insider, but it also increases the chance of them being a collector. A third thing is if they have comment sections where galleries are writing comments. Now, this obviously also increases the chances of them being a collector. Now, besides these 3 things that I just mentioned, there are obviously way more signs. Of course, I made a list with all of the possible signs out there. I think the list is 25 elements long. I'll share it at the end of the video so that you have a full overview of what to look for. Now, I want to point something out here, because what I just explained is a very powerful networking tool, obviously, but also a powerful sales tool. If you do this, you can get 5, 10, 15, 20 collectors an hour, depending on how fast you are. And if you can do that, then you could do 150 collectors in a day. And if you can find 150 collectors in one day and then spend a couple of days more to build out those connections, before you know it, you have 10 collectors that actually buy your work. And so what does that mean? It means that you, in that month, sold for $8,300, $12,400, $15,000, whatever you sell your artworks at. And so that's pretty powerful. If you compare that process to the traditional art establishment process of networking that they recommend, the difference is absolutely massive. What they will recommend you is to go to art fairs and then mingle with the art crowd and try to talk with people and try to get familiar with people on openings and all of that stuff. The reality is that That's a very inefficient way. If you think about it, you have to transport yourself to that art fair, paying for that transportation. Then you have to pay entry ticket fees. And then you have to spend hours on an art fair in the hope that you are going to connect with people. Who the fuck even does that? I remember going to art fairs, trying to connect with people, and I would be walking around there, understanding that I'm way too shy to go over and talk to people, and so I would basically be fantasizing about how many connections I would be able to get if I would be an extroverted social genius, which I'm not. And so it's very common for artists to go to these art fairs, spend 8 hours and not meet a single collector. That's the reality of that old art establishment's approach. Not to mention that the days that the art fair is open to the public don't even matter. It's the private viewing sessions that matter, where you can actually build real connections and real networks out. And so for most artists, you don't even have access to that. So again, the old art establishment way of networking that everybody is preaching, it just doesn't work. It's just too inefficient. It doesn't hold up to the 21st century ways that we have access to. The internet, the creator economy, has leveled the playing field and made it equal for every single artist. So that's it for my little rant. Let's go back to the main part of this video. Now that you have found all of these collectors, how are you going to approach them? What are you going to say to them? Because as I said earlier, if you're going to say, hey, check out my Instagram profile because I have amazing art, they will just laugh you out of the room. You will be burning leads, and the art world is a very small place. Whoever you see on your way up are the same people you see on your way down, and so you don't want to burn those leads. So how are you going to approach those collectors? Well, generally speaking, you want to provide value, and the easiest way to provide value in the beginning is, as I described earlier, commenting on their posts, liking their posts, consuming their posts, being a meaningful participant in their community and pushing their engagement up. Now, why is this so powerful? Well, everybody, including collectors, want to have their 15 minutes of fame, especially if they are posting on Instagram. They want to have more engagement, and if you can be that source that increases their engagement, then they will obviously have a positive feeling towards you because you're beneficial to their success. Now, besides this, another interesting thing will happen if you are constantly engaging with their posts, and especially if they don't have a lot of followers, then it's very likely that they will be engaging with your posts in return. And so what is going to happen then? The algorithm is going to see that connection, will think, hey, there is a established connection here, and they will start showing your posts on their feed organically, so that they are organically watching your art and stumbling upon it. And so that's a pretty interesting side effect that is going to happen with this particular strategy. Now, here's the thing. A lot of artists, including myself, I'm actually speaking about myself predominantly back in the days, when I had 50 followers, 100 followers, 150 followers, I was ashamed of only having 100 followers. And so I didn't really have the guts to contact collectors, because I thought, like, how are they going to value me? I only have 100 followers. This is just laughable. They're going to laugh me out of the room. But here's the thing. Having less followers is actually way more powerful than having more followers with this strategy. Let me explain. Let's say you have 100 followers, of which 70 are collectors, or 50 are collectors, or 40 are collectors, because you followed the process that I just outlined. Then, well, if 50 of the 100 are collectors, that means that 50% of your followers are collectors. What is going to happen? Well, Instagram, the algorithm, is going to try and find other people that will like the content that you put out. And it is going to base that decision on the people that are currently liking your content. And so if 50% of the people that are liking your content, are consuming your content, are art collectors, it's going to push out your posts to other collectors. And so as a result, if, let's say, your post reaches 100 people, or 200 people, or 300 people, 400 people, then a large portion of them will be collectors, because that is what Instagram is seeing are the people that are liking your posts. And so that is very powerful. It's way more powerful than an 18-year-old who has thousands of likes, but all of the people that are liking their posts are other artists or art enthusiasts, and nobody are collectors. And the reality is that you can definitely reach more collectors with less followers if you orchestrated in this way than with more followers that are not targeted and kind of in the wild. And so why am I saying this? Well, I want you to realize that there is no reason to be ashamed of 100 followers. If you can step over that shame that I had all the way in the beginning, and you can just follow this process, you will probably have more benefits than somebody who has 5,000 followers who are just artists or people who are interested in art but not art collectors. And so just knowing that hopefully gives you that power to step over that initial hurdle, to step over that fear, that shame that you might have of only having 100 followers. And so interacting with their Instagram page, if they are very active on Instagram, is a great way to provide value. Follow-up question is, of course, what are some other ways to provide value, to contact those collectors and build those relationships out? Well, I've made a list of 30 different ways to provide value, 30 different ways to approach them. Let me read a couple of those. First thing you could do is collector spotlights or something of that nature, where you either take people who have already collected your work and put them in a spotlight on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, or people who, if you don't have collectors yet, you can still do the same thing just with people that didn't collect your work. And you could send a message to them, something in the lines of, every month I spotlight a collector's unique collection on my page. I would love to feature your work. Let me know if you're interested, something like that. And this is also a great way to connect with those collectors further afterwards, because as you are featuring their collection and their ways, you obviously are going to ask them questions. Hey, what do you think about this work? Why did you collect this? Blah, 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 blah. There's a whole conversation there that happens, and it's a great way to build those connections out. Now, for this particular approach, it will indeed be beneficial if you have more than 100 followers on your Instagram page. Otherwise, they will probably not really be interested. Luckily, I have some other ways to contact them, so don't worry. Here's another way to contact them. You can discount things or provide special offers with a message like, hello, insert their name. I'm truly grateful for your support on my art posts. As a token of appreciation, I'm offering early supporters like you a special discount on my new collection. Let me know if you're interested. Very simple way to provide value while you are cold approaching them. So here's another one, offering free consultations. Here's the thing, a lot of collectors, especially beginner collectors, they don't actually know that much about art. They don't actually know that much about, for example, something as simple as conservation, how to conserve an artwork. And oftentimes, we're all human beings. We don't really have the guts to ask that. You don't want to look like a fool and ask that to the gallery that you bought it from, or if you didn't bought it from a gallery, because a gallery will probably offer that service. But if you bought it from an artist, you don't really want to ask, how can I conserve this? You don't want to look like a fool or something. And so you could offer that yourself as an artist. You could send them, when you have a collector that just bought a piece, you can quickly send them a message. Hey, if you have any questions about that, it doesn't have to be your piece, a piece of another artist. Hey, if you have any questions about conservation or anything like that, I would be happy to hop on a 20-minute call and explain you some basics. I've been doing this for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, whatever. And so that's value, like people are not going to be complaining, hey, why is this person contacting me with this free thing that they're offering? That doesn't happen. You can obviously do that. These are just some of the ways to approach collectors with value. As said, here's a list of 30 other ways that you can use to contact them, approach them with value. And as promised, here's also a list. This took me 10 hours to make or something. A list where you see all the different type of art collector profiles that exist at this moment. If for some reason I missed one, you can put it in the comments. So let's give a list of all the collector signs that are possible so that you can just immediately recognize them and don't have to waste time on things. On top of that, here's also a list with all the signs that a particular profile on Instagram is most likely a collector profile. By the way, if you need any help with any of the things that I mentioned, just send me a DM on Instagram. Now, so far we talked about how to find collectors and then build connections with them. And so naturally we should also talk about how to present your art in a way that attracts their interest so that they actually want to buy from you. And the best way to do that is to copy paste the strategies top level galleries won't tell you. I've made a video about this called Drowning in Unsold Pieces, Secret Selling Strategies Galleries Won't Tell You. It's linked in the description and in the end screen. Don't forget to blah, 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 blah. That said, get the hell out of here.